Well, we can get more on Ofsted now. Teachers and head teachers have gathered at the NAHT annual conference in Telford, and they voted on an emergency motion calling for members who are Ofsted inspectors to halt inspections until the end of industrial action. Well, it comes in the wake, of course, of the head teacher, Ruth Perry, taking her own life after Ofsted downgraded her school. Ruth's sister, Julia Waters, addressed the conference and said that she didn't want warm words, but action to reform the regulator. Well, I'm joined now by Hilda Palmer. She's from workers' rights charity Hazards campaign, whose organisation was quoted in Julia Waters' speech. Hilda, good to see you this afternoon. I know that you've done some research which is very relevant to what we're talking about. Perhaps you could just tell us some of the key findings from it.
We did some research. We studied 12 case studies of people who had taken their own lives due to unbearable pressure at work across a range of occupations like firefighters, garage workers, nurses, doctors, and several teachers. And the purpose of our research was to show that the failure of the HSE and the government to require employers to report work-related suicides under RIDDOR, and then to get them properly investigated, the root causes established, and preventative action taken, was actually leading to more deaths. And one of our findings was that around, at that time in 2020-21, around 10 teachers that we knew of had taken their own lives due to issues related to Ofsted. And
tell us more about that, because there are manifold pressures for any teacher, particularly a head teacher, and also amplified, I'd imagine, during the COVID period. But talk us through the role that Ofsted has played.
Well, that wasn't specifically the focus of our research. Our research was actually looking at all sorts of causes of work-related suicide, but because we looked at teachers, we did look at Ofsted. And of course, there are many reasons for this, but the reasons for people taking their own life, but the incredible stresses of around an Ofsted inspection were things that were publicly recorded around the deaths of at least 10 teachers. And there were many more cases and many more anecdotal examples. But we don't have this properly recorded because we don't have a proper system of reporting work-related suicides, and then the root causes being identified and investigated and preventative action put in place. And that was really the purpose of our research. We know the HSE accepts that work-related stress is causing an epidemic of anxiety and depression, and it records that it's the biggest cause of work-related illness and ill health and days lost at work in the country. But when someone takes their own life because the stress of work drives them over the edge, suddenly the HSE and the government says, we're not interested, we don't want to know about it. And that's clearly wrong. Had this been done earlier, then maybe some of these causes around Ofsted and the way it behaves and the harm it's causing to teachers' mental health would have been identified and action could have been taken to put these right.
Do you think too much attention has been put on the role of Ofsted in this? I mean, it's clear from what you're saying it was certainly a contributory factor, but what sounds like the big picture is that there just aren't enough safeguards for the mental health, for the pressures that teachers and head teachers are under.
I think you have to look at the causes. I think there's far too much emphasis on, let's look at what we do when people get really, really ill. And our argument, and the most sensible argument, is always, what is causing people to be really, really ill at work? And what can we do about preventing that? There's far, far too little on trying to stop the stress of work actually making people ill. And that's where we need to focus the attention. And the issue around Ofsted is that it's arbitrary and unfair. And there are criticisms about its one-word judgments which don't really sum up a school. And there's evidence to show that its judgments don't even match the final outcomes for students in those schools. It doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference what the Ofsted judgment was 5 years later as to what the children are achieving. There's a problem with Ofsted. That's a root cause that has to be dealt with. Let's look at those. We don't want Indian head massages and well-being walks and counselling. We want to stop head teachers and all teachers being driven to massive ill health in the first place.
Is there enough accountability, do you think, for Ofsted?
I don't think there is. I think Ofsted is very, very unaccountable, and it's setting its own agenda, and setting an agenda that's not just harmful during its inspections, but that actually sets an agenda for the way schools operate and the way education is being, subverted. And there certainly isn't enough accountability. No, I think that's definitely true, and that has been shown by the outpouring of information that's come out since Ruth Perry's very sad death.
Hilda Perry, good to talk to you this afternoon. Hilda Palmer, I should say. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Sam.